the chamber this week, we're talking about the pirate most helpful to America. We explore a classic world that has become a truly open world game. And we have a conversation of the best way to govern your people and adding variety to your world of role-playing games. Also, we regret to inform you that this episode of Fandom Roulette will be lacking in all wackiness. We are now very serious boys who will never be wacky again. All this and more on Fandom Roulette. Hey, greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Fandom Roulette. This is Joseph.
And I am Cody.
Hello, Cody.
Greetings and salutations, my friend.
that was a spike right there. We're no longer going to be a wacky podcast because you're listening to one of the winning team members of the local bar's Tolkien trivia team. So
the most prestigious and serious award that anyone could receive.
It's true. It's basically the Oscars of very narrow focused trivia at one very specific bar in Northeast Ohio.
Indubitably.
No, I'm just kidding. We're still going to be wacky.
Man, you threw me for a loop. I had no idea that you were going to say that. And so I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, misdirect. And then I was like, oh, I kind of made that Fandom Roulette thing a little bit short, so it's going to be awkward for them. But anyways, what nerdy stuff have you been up to, Cody?
Well, surprisingly, I've been not a whole lot. We had our session last weekend, did we not?
In theory, our penultimate session, but
right. I mean, I would break it into two parts. I think the next time we play will actually be our last session, depending on how long combat goes.
Okay, yeah.
That'll be the end, and then we're kind of do like some fun epilogue-y kind of stuff, and then that is it for the campaign. Isn't that crazy?
Oof, I don't want to think about it. A friend and I have been lovingly referring to our last character, or our last session as "Oops, all character scenes."
Oops, all character scenes. Yes, there was a lot of development that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, in like the last literally like the night before, like if I was a fan of this show and I was watching the episode, all that development happened like literally like, oh man, there's 1 half hour left. How are they going to wrap all this shit up? If I was an audience member, like I honestly don't know. Also, my character's totally going to commit heroic sacrifice. So
no, hold on, maybe we'll see.
No, it's happening. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, you just told our entire group that on the radio before the session can even start. So
I think they knew they weren't going to be able to stop me, Cody.
That accurate. So
I'm a very bullheaded young dwarf.
Tangents aside, what nerdy stuff have you been up to?
Yesterday I was hanging out with one of my friends from college, and to draw a connection to, I believe, last week's episode, I played some Spider-Man, and it was the fucking best.
Right? It's so good.
Just earned that E right off the bat. Yeah, it was so much fun. Like, the web slinging just felt so cool and natural.
It just feels like the comic book that I always wanted to be in. I know that seems kind of like I feel like that's the stereotypical compliment the game gets, but
sure.
It is absurdly strange how punchy and very comic booky this game is.
Yeah, for sure.
Being a video game. It's very rare.
Yeah, and then I've just kind of started catching up on all the media that I've kind of let slip from various reasons.
I didn't realize there were 2 brand new seasons of not only Luke Cage, but my completely favorite Marvel cinematic experience, Iron Fist.
Yo, I heard Iron Fist actually gets really good.
Dude, I don't care.
Cody, can I tell you a thing that might make you care?
Okay.
Magic
yes.
guns.
What?
Magic guns.
Okay. Well, I was always going to watch it, but now I'm going to watch it intently and still be upset that the first season was such a stinker.
I've also heard, too, that they hired, like, the fight choreographer from Black Panther to help out. So, they actually have like a fight choreographer on set now, as opposed to last season where like they'd just be like, punch that guy, and then he'd be like, but okay, and then and then it would look bad. So
yeah, the fight scenes weren't super great. So I'm glad they're at least putting in. I'm surprised it did well enough for a second season, if I'm being honest with you.
I think it was like once again one of those deals of just the way that the Netflix model works.
Okay.
Where it's like, I think that it's like they had already signed an agreement for, I think, X numbers of series already.
Okay, so
and
they
then,
kind of front loaded, and then it wasn't super great, and they're just like, well, we signed the contract.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me, and like, but I've heard that they've
upped the ante on this one.
Yeah, my friend who was reviewing it for his job said like most of it is like fine, but there's a few moments where it actively becomes pretty great, and then you're like, why couldn't it have been like that the whole time? So like, I'll get to it eventually. I've started watching Jessica Jones, but it's like a slow burn at the moment. So
season 2,
yeah,
nice. It's a good season. I liked it.
But yeah, so anyway, guys, this is Fandom Roulette. This is a podcast where we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including, but not limited to, history, video games, and role-playing things, as well as anything else that we might be interested at the time that we just are really passionate about letting you guys, our wonderful fans, know about. So yeah, this is this is like season 1. Whereas, you know, the stuff that came before this was like season 0, I suppose, but it's a season 1 where we both have sort of our own thematic things. And so for the history section, we're talking about rogues.
Yar!
So yeah, kind of like an ongoing thing that I've been talking about, with rogues specifically, is people kind of like on the fringes of society who are like doing what it takes to make it good and things like that. But this week, the guy that I chose to talk about is like slightly different.
George Washington.
Yep, 100%. So anyway,
yes, I got it.
In 1776, there arose from the ground a man with a curly powdered wig and wooden teeth and a horse. He was like, "Hello, my name is George Washington. Let me be your general." That's actually not true. George Washington was actually accidentally kind of responsible for starting the French and Indian War.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, he was like a young colonel in like the Virginia militia, and like he went over colonial lines, and then he like bumped into like a group of like French soldiers. They're like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He was like, "Nothing." And then they fired on him, and they came back. He's like, "Guys, the French attacked us." And then they started this whole war. So, at least that was what I was told, at least. So,
wow.
You know how history goes.
Not super great.
Yeah, so anyway, so we're gonna like jump ahead though in American history. We are now in a horrible war called the War of 1812.
Yikes.
Yeah, but it lasted a lot longer than that, actually.
There's like a lot of gunshots and people screaming. It's terrible. I don't like this place. Can we go?
No.
Oh shit.
We're talking about people now.
Okay, well, be careful not to take a stray musket shot.
No!
Oh, damn it.
Good.
This is the first time, and it won't be the last.
Yeah. Thank God for my history armor. Yeah.
Yes.
But anyways, that was certainly a bit. Man, like, gotta go back and redact that whole intro section where we said we're not gonna be whacking it anymore. But anyways, so the War of 1812 was the first war that the American government, under the United States Constitution, was fighting against Great Britain because of a little thing called impressment. So, among other things, but impressment was like the big one, which was that if you were like an American sailor and you were like over in Europe, and sometimes you would get drunk, and then you would wake up and they'd be like, "Congratulations, you're a British sailor now." And they were like, "No, I'm an American." The British were like, "Too bad, buddy." That's
Wait, how does that work?
That's usually how, cause like,
is this just like weird old timey shit that like
kind of
is wrong.
I mean, like, impressment was like a thing that like Great Britain was doing to their citizens for a while. It was just that now in this case they happen to be impressing foreign citizens, which was like a no-go. That's not cool.
Right.
But the reason that I bring up the fact that we were under the newly formed, or not super newly formed, but the Constitution instead of the Articles of Confederation is a very important reason, because the United States Constitution is not necessarily a constitution of laws.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that it was a constitution that kind of laid out how laws were going to be passed, how laws were going to be, judged and discussed, things like that. And then as an original safeguard, because people were freaking out, what the Constitutional Convention did was passed a series of 10 articles or amendments called the Bill of Rights, which don't necessarily make things illegal. They are kind of like a list of safeguards that, in theory, the government should not become tyrannical enough to overthrow or to get rid of. But there are two things that are expressly forbidden in the Constitution, Cody. Do you know what those two things are?
No, I don't.
Okay. It's treason, which is a good thing to have as a safeguard against. This is going to pay off, I promise.
Okay.
And piracy. Yeah, so
Yar.
our friends the pirates, were not allowed to be a pirate in America. But during the War of 1812, there was a guy who was working out of a little city that you may have heard of in Louisiana, or at that point known as the New Orleans Territory, known as Jean Lafitte, who was a very famous smuggler. Wink.
Yeah. Wink.
Yeah. So Jean Lafitte was a very interesting gentleman. So he was, as you can probably tell by his name, French, but also evidence suggests that he might have had a little bit of Spanish heritage as well, and it is possible that somewhere along his family's lineage, there were members of his family who were Jewish who escaped Spain to get away from the Inquisitions that happened in that country. But he was French and perhaps a little bit Spanish, and the best evidence suggests that he was born in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, which is now Haiti. And basically, after a while, some settlers from this area started resettling along the Mississippi River in the Louisiana Territory, which at the moment had the biggest city, which was New Orleans. Now, quick little aside, because that's never happened on this podcast before, right, Cody?
Right, that has never happened ever because we're super legit now.
We're super legit now. The city of New Orleans has an issue, which is it's lower than sea level. So even during modest rainstorms, it floods pretty badly there. But the thing was, they were tasked with finding a suitable place for a city, and so basically these explorers went far enough in that they found land that wasn't horrid, and then they just declared it a city, not knowing that it did flood when it rained.
Oof.
So that's fun, right?
A+.
Yeah. So basically, as a young man, Lafitte really enjoyed exploring the wetlands and the bayou country south of New Orleans, and he, during this time, really gained a lot of knowledge about all of these little inlets that the Gulf of Mexico was the Gulf was creating. So he became really familiar with little rivers and places to hide and things like that. And it just so happened that his older brother, Pierre, became a privateer, which, and as you remember from our award-eligible, there we go, that's a better joke, our award-eligible pirate episode, privateers often became pirates.
Yeah. I also know a fun fact about Pierre.
Okay.
He made good ice cream.
Yeah, I think that might be a local joke.
Oh, damn it.
No, that's fine. I quite like that, actually. But yeah, so anyways, so during, after the United States made the Louisiana Purchase, in 1803, the government started beginning to enforce the Embargo Act of 1807, which, basically barred American ships from docking at any foreign port and imposed embargo goods on all things imported to the U.S., which made things really hard for New Orleans merchants because they relied heavily on trade with the Caribbean. So the Lafitte brothers decided that they were going to, let's just say, take matters into their own hands and started a smuggling ring to smuggle goods from Louisiana to the Caribbean and vice versa.
Definitely not pirating.
Definitely not pirating. Wink.
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 Winku.
So, basically, yeah, they worked out of New Orleans running, supplies back and forth from the Caribbean to Louisiana. And then in 1812, the United States declares war on Britain. To supplement the Navy, the United States offered letters of marque to private armed vessels. So it was privateering. It wasn't piracy, Cody. It was legit because the government said it was okay. Cody.
Yeah. Wink.
Wink. This is a good joke. I like this joke. And so basically, during the War of 1812, the Lafitte brothers were, doing their smuggling thing, and they were getting lots of money in contraband, which did eventually piss off the governor of the Louisiana Purchase area. But basically, during the War of 1812, lots of garbage went down, and I'm kind of skipping over a whole war, but let's just put it this way. The American military / Navy wasn't super ready to fight a war against a major power like Great Britain yet.
Okay.
The only big thing that really happened that made them very lucky was the fact that Great Britain was fighting another big war at the time against a guy you might have heard of named Napoleon.
I know him.
Yeah, and so basically, given the look between, or given the choice between continuing this war with the Americas or literally fighting the enemy at the gate, as it were, in Napoleon, basically the British decided that they were going to basically just sign a peace treaty with the Americas to keep them quiet. But here's the other big thing. Great Britain did actually invade Washington, D.C., and the president did have to flee the White House, which they did light on fire.
What?
Yeah.
No.
We were not prepared to fight this war. It's just that...
I mean, that sounds like us.
The Americans were like, oh, God. Topical. The Americans were good at, like, outlasting and things like that. So eventually, it was just becoming too expensive to fight a two-front war. Now, here's the thing, Cody. I'm sure you know this. You know what wasn't very reliable or fast-moving during the early 1800s?
Boats.
That's right. Communications.
Yeah.
So, there was, in December 1st, 1814, General Andrew Jackson, who became a very hot take bad president. Don't at me. Basically, in 1814, there was a big battle in New Orleans, and Jackson met with Lafitte, who offered to serve if the U.S. would pardon his men who agreed to defend the city, and Jackson agreed to do so. So they passed a full pardon for all of the people working for Lafitte, and they joined the New Orleans militia to help fight the British, which I will remind you, This battle happened after the war was over. It's just that communication was very bad. And so basically, and January 21st, Jackson issued a statement praising the troops, especially the cannoneers, and named Jean and Pierre Lafitte, declared that they had the same courage and fidelity as the regular soldiers, and requested clemency for the Lafittes and the men who served under them. So they were given a full pardon. Hooray, good job, Jean Lafitte.
Yeah.
But then, after that, in 1816, the Lafitte brothers agreed to act as spies for Spain, which was embroiled in the Mexican War of Independence. And it was during this time that I believe both of the Lafitte brothers died during this. Oh no, they didn't actually die. They died in where was it?
I'm starting to believe now that they're immortal.
They were immortal.
Once you said they didn't die, they're still hiding out.
No, he died in 1823. He was attacked by Spanish ships, and the Spanish ships were heavily armed and returned fire, and they passed away. So
you say.
So I say, yeah. So in New Orleans, the Lafitte brothers are absolute legends. Everyone loves them. They're crazy, what's the word I'm looking for? They're like local heroes, local legends.
Icons.
Pardon?
Icons.
Yes, icons. Thank you. That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
There is actually a bar in New Orleans called Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop, which is located on Bourbon Street. According to who you talk to, it is the longest running bar in America, or North America.
That's super neat.
Yeah, right? I actually had a drink there. It was pretty cool.
Very cool.
And it might also be the oldest building in the United States that hosts a bar. And so, one other thing. So at the beginning, I talked about how he's a little bit different than like the other privateer or the other rogues that we talked about for one main reason, which is according to a lot of accounts, Lafitte really enjoyed dressing fancy. He adopted more aristocratic mannerisms and dress than most of his fellow privateers. He was also reportedly very handsome and friendly. He enjoyed drinking, gambling, and women. And during his life, he acted as a soldier, a sailor, a diplomat, a merchant, and much more, demonstrating natural gifts for leadership. But, once again, guy who started off pretty much at the bottom, and, by using his natural inclinations, exploring, and, leadership abilities, became a pretty notorious privateer, then became a smuggler who definitely was not a pirate, wink. And then
definitely not a pirate, wink.
And actually helped America defeat the British in a pretty important battle, the Battle of New Orleans, and may still be around today, as Cody thinks. So,
yeah, no, totally. That is my thoughts on him.
Any questions?
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions. I think you covered it pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing my last thoughts are I'm looking for them. That's my new lifelong quest, is to find these brothers, because I know they're still alive because they're immortal.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got confused. I thought that they died during the Mexican War
everyone assumed they did, because normally people don't survive an attack from a heavily armed naval ship.
Well, I thought they died during the Mexican War of Independence, but they died actually later than that, so it was just a miscommunication on my part. But anyways, do your thing, Cody. Maybe we can pitch a show to the History Channel where we go and find them.
Yeah. History Channel, if you're watching.
No. Please keep this hidden from the History Channel. I'm imploring you. Please.
A guy who's got probably 4 history college classes under his belt, now an expert on finding all of the Immortals.
Is that going to be the title of your show?
Yeah, Finding the Immortals.
Finding all the Immortals is a good title.
Yeah. I mean, I think Elvis is on there somewhere, according to conspiracy theorists. There's plenty of people. And we could do a couple different seasons. It could be really fun.
That's true.
Yeah, it would be like those Bigfoot shows.
Wow.
Oh.
Hello, it's me, Waluigi.
Oh, man. I didn't give you an invite. That is probably the nerdiest, dumbest burn I've ever done in my entire life.
Yeah, neither did Nintendo.
Oh, boy. Waluigi. Why don't you tell me what's good? What's cooking?
Hi, Waluigi. What's up? Ah, you have to have a character voice before the video game section. And
it's
yeah,
iconic.
It's true.
Now.
And I have to say the character voice was like pretty okay at the beginning, Waluigi, but like it sounds like you're just slipping. Yeah, I know the guy who does the character voices isn't very good at extending it for long periods of time. You should play D&D with him. He does his character voice for maybe 5 minutes at the beginning of the session. And then after 3 hours, he's back to his normal voice. Hey, that's insulting, Waluigi. You were not invited to those sessions. It's not. It's not my fault that we didn't establish a character voice rules until well into the campaign. All right,
that's
very
fair.
good.
Next campaign, we'll have strict character voice rules.
Yeah.
So Waluigi, what's up? What's good? What's cooking?
I heard you're talking. Oh God, that was bad. Wait, I gotta get back into it. Nope. Well, he's coughing in the corner a little bit, and I pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. I'm just going to read it aloud here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard that you were going to talk about a Nintendo game. Wah.
He put the "us" in that note too.
He did. It's like their thing, Cody.
Oh right. Yeah. I am going to talk about a Nintendo game today.
Is it a game? Is it a game starring me, Waluigi? Wah?
No, definitely not. I don't know if there is a game starring Waluigi at all.
He said it's called Every Mario Game Ever. He's the secret protagonist.
Oh, right.
Also, did you see that amazing article where for every reply and that this guy got on his Twitter, he was going to come up with one nickname for Waluigi?
Oh God.
It's I think 9,000 nicknames for Waluigi. It's amazing. Oof. If I find it, I'll post it.
Gross.
But anyways. Yeah, what are we talking about, Cody? 30 minutes into the episode.
So, in the video game section for this season, I'm talking about open world games and how I feel about them, games that are coming out, etc., etc. And I'm going to talk about the open world game that changed my view on open world games, I guess. It's weird.
So
it's definitely up there. I just need an audio clip of me walking out the door and shutting the door.
Yeah, we can get that pretty easy, I think.
Yeah, that's it's probably already
you
in there.
That bad boy for literally every episode of Fan Roulette because it happens at least once.
So no, it's not Assassin's Creed 2. I'm gonna jump out my window.
It's Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You got it. It's it's Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Is that the one that's in London, Victorian England? Brotherhood? No. That's the one that
honestly.
That's one I think.
No, the one in France was Unity. I don't know Brotherhood.
Fair enough.
Anyways, not important.
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild.
Smell that, Cody?
Yeah,
it's the wild.
You can smell it. It smells like bears. Yeah. Oh God. Well, don't breathe it in too hard.
That was a painful bit.
That is a painful bit.
So anyways.
My apologies to you and to the audience who had to endure this nonsense.
Yeah. Sorry everyone. I'm just going to take a minute off. I'm going to let my voice rest for a second.
Yeah. So Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a game that came out about a year and a half, 2 years ago within that region. Came out with the Switch. It was its launch title. And holy shit, this game changed my life on a level that I never thought I would experience. Because at that point in my life, I was done with A, Zelda games, and B, open world games. I was just kind of done with like that buzz phrase, all of the, oh, these big worlds, because a lot of the times I find myself going, these are really cool, big open worlds, but they feel so flat and there's nothing in them, so there's no point in me exploring these beautifully handcrafted worlds.
Understood.
However, that changed when I played Breath of the Wild. And I'm not going to get too deep into the game, but I'm going to talk about the mechanics and why I think open world works in this case.
Okay.
So if you've been following us on this season, you know, open world kind of suggests, you know, big, immersive worlds with stuff to do in every nook and cranny. And there's multiple ways to tackle. Yeah, a sandbox, if you will. Lots of different ways to tackle objectives. Oftentimes, there are either crafting or kind of survival aspects that get thrown in there.
Sure.
Although it's not necessary. But the idea, I think the two core things is like big openness. Like the idea that like, whoa, I'm in this huge place.
Yeah.
And then the other core mechanic is choice, like the ability to do things the way you want them.
You know, it's trying to capture, if I could be so bold, trying to capture the magic of playing a role-playing game in a video game.
Yeah, or even just like an RPG in general. It could be a tabletop one, just like that idea of like being immersed in a world and doing stuff in it. So Breath of the Wild, why I bring this up and why it's changed my opinion. These mechanics, while they're not new, and this is I've heard some reviews that are to me, it sounds like you're just being sour at a game that did really well.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of people said that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild didn't breach any new, like, boundaries. Like, they didn't go above and beyond what open world does. And my argument to that is that I think while the mechanics themselves are not super new or innovative in any way, their combination made for such a unique experience that I hadn't felt in a really long time.
Okay. And
I'll get into that. Mechanics. The things that I did like. The tutorial. And a lot of games have tutorials or like a big wall of like, here are all the buttons and this is what they do.
Yeah, for sure.
This game did a really good job of making it short and sweet. Not being too hand-holdy, but giving you enough information about the game to, like, go at it and explore and have all the things you would need to play the game.
Okay.
So you start in a kind of tutorial area. And then the other nice thing is, unlike previous Zelda games, all the kind of puzzle-solving tools you get throughout a Legend of Zelda game, in this one, you get them right away. Like, Tutorial Island, you get all the tools you will ever need to solve any puzzle in the game.
Okay, so it's not like the classic, like, you get the hook shot, and then suddenly there's, like, the boss is defeated by the hook shot.
Right.
Thing.
So you have all the tools you'll need at the beginning of the game, where the original, like, Zelda formula has always been that, you know, get item, or defeat boss with that item, so on and so forth. That opens up new areas. Continue that cycle until you get to the last boss. Kind of an old hat at this point.
For sure.
Like, I don't even think I played before Breath of the Wild, I don't even think I finished or played
Skyward Sword?
I know, I have Skyward Sword, but I never played it. And I never finished Twilight Princess. Right? I know, I'm a monster.
But like, how do you? But in Twilight Princess, she hangs out with the Cullens, who are vampires.
I'm sorry, what?
Don't worry about it, Cody. Carry on.
I must have not gotten to the vampire bit.
No, that was a joke because there was like that popular book series called Twilight, about
Oh, ha, ha, ha,
about the
ha, ha.
vampires who are vegetarians, which means that they drink animal blood, not human blood. And when I heard that, I thought that was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard.
Yeah, anyways, I'll get back on tangent here.
What? That
Yeah,
sounds so
right?
boring.
Right.
Okay.
The other cool thing about Breath of the Wild is all of the items in the game, for the most part, have durability. So after a certain point, that cool sword that you've acquired will eventually break.
Okay.
Or your bow and arrow that you're using. Like, you run out of arrows,
Sure.
and you eventually will break the bow that you're using.
Now, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
I have heard a complaint about this game is that sometimes the weapons break too quickly.
I would say they don't, and I'll get to my only complaint in the game at the very end of this.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
No. That's a good question, but I will get to it. I promise.
Okay.
Another mechanic that I really like is that you can really tackle the game any way you want once you get past the tutorial.
Okay.
Meaning, you find out through a series of events that there are dungeons that you have to go into and complete in order to gain the powers you need to fight the big bad. However, you are not strictly limited in which one you go to first, because you no longer have these items that restrict parts of the world to you. That said, there are some areas that are a little harder to get to, but can easily be conquered by some of the survival mechanics in the game, which I really like. Also, you technically, while not advised for those faint of heart, could basically forego all of that and just be like, nah, I'm gonna fight Ganon right now. Fuck it. YOLO.
How's that go?
I mean, you probably won't get very far, but I think somebody probably has, like, gone through the game and...
Like the pro strat speedrun?
Yeah, like, I bet you there's an any percentage run where, like, they don't do anything, then they cheese the whole thing, and that's, like, the fun of, like, an open world game.
It's like XX underscore, like, Bone Thug 420 underscore XX.
Yeah. So you can tackle the game any way you want. You can go to all the dungeons. You can go to some of them. You can go straight to Ganon. You can do all the dungeons, then go to Ganon. I pretty much did everything I wanted to before I fought the final fight.
Okay.
Pretty typical, but if I went through it again, I might try to, skip the dungeon that I liked the least or whatever.
Sure, that makes sense.
Another part of the game, and I think this is one of the key things that I love about this game, is that almost every single area in the game is packed with something that aids you on your adventure. No matter where you're going, I found it very hard to not find survival materials, whether it's like food or things to build, fires, like all of these, like, you need all these things to survive in this world that...
Did you get those Deku nuts?
Those Korok seeds?
Those nuts, dough?
Dough, yes. Definitely. And then also another part is sometimes the world is a little weird, like things are shifted out of place, and if you put them into the correct spot, like these like kind of little mini puzzles, you will get this item called a Korok seed, which you could then trade in to gain more inventory space so you can hold more weapons and shields, because apparently in Link's pocket is a black hole.
Sure, it's a bag of holding.
Yeah, classic.
Do you play musical instruments in this one?
Not necessarily, but I know there's a DLC where they added like this guy who's like a bard, if you will, a singer of songs, and he's trying to perfect this song. So there's kind of some music in there. Man,
you don't get an ocarina?
Not that I'm aware of, and I could totally be misremembering. I didn't have any time this week to actually boot it up and play a little bit. And then the survival aspects they added. So not on top of the fact that weapons, arrows, and shields will break over time, you also don't replenish hearts the same way you did in traditional Zelda games. You actually have to eat food to gain your health back.
Gross.
Right. And there's also temperature mechanics. So there are areas that are too hot or too cold, and you have to wear the appropriate armor or, clothing to traverse those areas.
Wait, Cody, what did you say those sections were?
What? Temperate?
Yeah, temperature-wise, they were what?
Hot or cold?
Too hot? Hot damn? Just cut all that out.
No, it's all staying in.
Damn it.
And then there's also power-ups. There's potions you can brew with the things you collect to gain certain buffs. Like maybe you attack stronger for a little bit of time. You gain more health.
Okay.
You naturally are more resistant to damage.
I'm into that.
All of these things added into the game, alone, they're not really that different from what we've played before, right? Like, these mechanics aren't like, ooh, I've never heard it. This is the best thing since sliced bread. It's all stuff we've done before.
It's kind of sounding Skyrim-y a little bit.
A little bit. But all of these together made it so that 40, 50, 60 hours of my life went by like that.
Oh my god. Get those hours back, Cody.
I know, I can't. They're gone. And it was so good. Like, it was so much, like, I think and with the tools that you get, because some of the tools are really neat. Like, one of them stops time for a brief period.
Uh-huh.
But it only stops time on an object.
Weird.
So, like, if an enemy's holding something, you can hit them with that, and then that thing is locked in place, and they're like, wait, what? Like, they no longer have that thing. There are bombs, which are pretty iconic for the Zelda franchise. And, magnetism, where you can, like, grab things that are metal and, like, kind of throw them around.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, with all these, like, new tools, even combat becomes new and exciting, because you can be like, okay, well, let me take this big metal crate and throw it around and try to, like, knock some of these people down and shit like that. There's also unique weapons and things like that. But while these things alone aren't super unique, like, we've all seen this stuff before.
Yeah.
Together, every inch of this place was fun and exciting. And my only complaint with the game, which is super minor, and it's coming back to that point, the end game, when you finally get, like, some of the best gear and some of the best items, and spoilers for a 2-year-old game, sorry, when you acquire the Master Sword, the game becomes almost comically easy. So, like, while the beginning feels kind of frustrating because items deteriorate really fast, when you get to the point in the game where you have, like, 5 or 6 of the best items in the game, even if they do break, it's very long before you kind of run into the, oh no, I need to collect all those weapons again.
Oh, jeez.
And my only complaint was remedied later with I believe it was a free DLC for kind of Master Quest mode, which is everything is super hard.
Okay.
So the fact that it's easy on the normal mode doesn't really mean a whole, but I mean, I still put, like I said, 40 to 60 hours into this game. And my only problem with, like, gameplay was that at the end of the game, I was like, when I went and finally fought Ganon, it was pretty easy. Like, I didn't struggle.
You're just like, yawn.
Yeah, because at that point I had all the best foods. Like, I literally stocked up my entire inventory filled with, like, super heart foods. Like, food that would fill up all my hearts and then give me, like, 20 extra. And, I had the Master Sword, which did more damage to him. There's like a cool kind of side quest area where you can get the Ocarina of Time's Hylian shield, which is, like, the best shield in the game. Like, there was all these things that I did to prepare myself for it, and then it ended up being, again, it was kind of easy.
Fair enough.
And there's also a couple DLCs where you go through basically a gauntlet of fights, but you start off with nothing, and you basically have to pick up gear on the way through the trials, which is pretty rough. And then the other thing that I told you, there's kind of like a little side quest where you help this guy with the bard, and somehow you get a motorcycle. I don't really understand how that works.
Whoa. I'm into that.
Yeah, so I think Breath of the Wild, it changed my opinion. Like, I feel like open world games should feel like that. I should feel like every area is got something that I'm interested in. You know, whether the game forces me to be interested in it or, you know, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want in an open world game. And I have a feeling that it's going to be really hard to create that effect again without kind of basically copying everything that Breath of the Wild did. But I am eager to see games try. Because I don't think Breath of the Wild is the end of like great open world games. I think it's just the beginning.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I really don't have any questions.
That's fair. I mean, it's also going to be a pretty long episode, so we should probably get into the late middle section.
Late middle section time. It's the late middle section time. Come learn about our social media in the middle section. Doop-a-doop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keeping it quick.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
so
welcome to the middle section. This is where we can
welcome.
Learn about our social media and whatnot.
Yeah. You can find us on Twitter at fandomr_podcast, where we are doing some fun things, such as Fandom Friday, where we post some old photos of ourselves or things that we're doing, etc. Just basically just general nerdy stuff, not necessarily pertaining to the podcast.
Sounds great.
We've been posting some little sneak peeks into things that we're talking about in the last episodes. If you've been following. And then we also, you know, announcements and things like that are definitely going to go on Twitter, Facebook, and all that. If you want to get at us, want to get into this conversation, you want to, you know, we tend to leave an episode or two in there in case people want to, you know, revisit a certain topic or talk to us about stuff. A lot of our older episodes are based on, or at least the D&D section were based on questions we had from fans.
Yes.
So if you want to do that, you can email us at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com. Or if you go to our website, www.fandomroulette.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a little form there that you can fill out. And then boom, that'll get sent to us so we can get you in on this conversation and not just be two of us. We're also on iTunes and SoundCloud, so do all the things. Share, like, subscribe.
Review,
definitely
subscribe.
Tell a friend. We really appreciate it. We're also on Facebook. We're going to be on YouTube at some point, but we're also on Instagram and Tumblr, Fandom Roulette.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
Hooray.
So please feel free to reach out, have a conversation with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and if you write a Garbage Kid fanfic, I will read it on air.
Verbatim, he says.
Verbatim. I mean, there's gonna be a screening process, but
I'm excited.
I won't read anything cold. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta read it first. Just to make sure that passes my sniff test.
Got it. So, so at this point, we usually go to the... Wait. What is that?
Oh, no. It smells bad.
Oh.
I don't want to, like, make myself cough on mic again, or else I would be doing Foley work as well.
It just smells like day-old, like 3-day-old feet. Guys, it's the Garbage Kid.
Hey, don't insult 3-day-old feet. They've been working hard.
This is our little
Cody,
section before.
Why do you put feet into your garbage can?
Moving on. This is the section where every week we take turns making RPG characters, whether they characters you want to play, characters you want to put in your campaign, or just fun, silly characters that you want to put in your story. We set them up using this incredible book called Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Now, I know what you're going to say. Everything? Everything.
No, I wasn't going to say that. I believed you.
We also handcraft these names with a team of writers and comedians.
Yeah, while
to come
Luigi's
up
sitting
with,
over there giving a thumbs up.
Yeah, and we come up with these perfect names. And today of all days, we, Fandom Roulette, bring you Fate Violetbane.
A hero for the ages.
Dragonborn Bard.
Oh my god. Yes.
So, Fate knew who their parents
Good.
Doesn't matter.
It was plays out later.
And was born in a sage's laboratory.
What the fuck?
Right? Fate has no siblings.
Okay.
And was raised by their mother and father.
Really? Both of them?
Yeah.
Take that,
both.
Disney.
Fate lived a modest lifestyle in a small house.
Nice. Very nice.
Fate had a few close friends and lived an ordinary childhood.
I would assume so. They're a bard. That charisma score, though.
So far, so good.
Yeah, I know, right?
Fate became a bard because they picked up a musical instrument one day and instantly discovered that they could play it.
Ooh, very good, Fate.
Fate's instrument of choice is a masterfully handcrafted fiddle.
Oh, I love it.
Fate's biggest embarrassment was their first and last performance of Mert Man About Town.
Oh, no.
Fate's defining work was a hoop, 2 pigeons, and a hellhound. A subtle parody of an incompetent noble.
Interesting.
Fate is 20 years old.
Okay.
And has had one life event leading up to this moment.
Oh, okay.
I know. I rolled really low on this one.
Yeah.
Fate suffered a terrible tragedy.
Oh, good.
Fate was involved in dark magic and brought shame upon their family.
All right. Well, then, Cody, this changes everything.
So, how would you rate Fate Violet Bane?
Man, before that last little bit, I was like, I bet that they saw a Hot Topic once and was just like aghast at it.
Yeah.
But now I think they at least go in, and maybe they'll look at the cool like belts, but maybe they're not quite ready to buy one yet.
You know, I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, they definitely probably go into a Hot Topic every now and then. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Fate has the courage to buy the studded leather belt.
Yeah.
That they so desperately want.
And like, for the record, if it weren't for that last bit, like, I bet it was.
Oh, totally wouldn't even
Fate's parents told them, like, don't go into that store. That's a bad store. And they're like, I always listen to my mama and papa.
Yes, mama, papa.
Yeah.
I will never go into Hot Topic.
Yes, those topics, they are too hot for...
Hot Topic.
They are too hot for a young Dragonborn bard like me. Like I. Papa.
So, yeah, that's Fate, everybody.
That was good. I liked it.
Yeah, so for our next and last session, because we're probably going to run a little over.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We've been world building, Joe and I.
Have we?
During this season, yeah.
I don't know where I've been.
We've built themes, we've made factions, we've made kingdoms, and now we're kind of getting into the mechanics, the kind of, I wouldn't say nitty gritty, but like the gears that turn that make these places feel alive.
Sure.
And today we are talking about government or just governing structure within your world.
So yeah, this one's going to be a little bit different than the past couple of weeks there, folks. So
right. So like key things to think about when building it. The 3 main ones, and one of them's going to sound like I'm beating you over the head with the same information. How, why, and theme.
How, why, and theme. Interesting.
Yes. How did this government come to be?
Aha.
Why? Like what? Or
sure.
I think I meant to say who.
No. Why
and
works.
Then why? Yeah. How it came. Why it's there. And then how does it fit your theme? Because there is, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but there are some connotations, some things that we as people kind of hold on to when we think of governmental structures. Like,
sure,
there is a very specific mindset you have when you find out that your fantasy world is a dictatorship.
For sure.
Similar with other things, but and this is kind of the weird one. This isn't quite as wild as factions where you get to sprinkle everything in. A lot of this comes from using world history as kind of inspiration to cultivate your own government structure. And the reason we do this, and the reason you want to ask these questions, is while it may not come up in session 1, maybe even session 2, but if you plan to run a campaign or even like, a concurring world, like eventually there are going to be rules and things that come into play, and having those things on hand will help you figure out, like, how is crime and punishment handled?
For sure.
Or what's the general tone when government figures show up?
Yeah.
2 fun ones for fantasy, because there's 2 pages in the Dungeon Master's Guide that give you ideas and kind of D&D examples from their past. But the 2 ones that I thought that were kind of cool in this context was a magocracy, which is a governing body composed of spellcasters who rule as lords.
A magocracy.
Yeah, so MAGOCRACY. And then theocracy, which normally is rulership falls to a representative or collection of a religion.
Mm-hmm.
However, this is a role playing game. This is a this is a tabletop experience. Like in your world, the gods could exist and walk among the people.
Sure.
So a theocracy seems kind of cool for a fantasy game, because it's not just like a collection of religions. It could be like a collection of people who are taking orders from like an angel or some celestial body or a fiend. You know what I mean? Yeah,
100%. I didn't even think of theocracy in those terms.
Yeah, so those are the 2 things I thought of, and just kind of the general things that I think about when I'm trying to come up with the government. Are there anything, like, things that you have been thinking about as you've been building your thing?
Yeah,
that come to mind?
So one of the things I was thinking about a lot, and one of the reasons I kind of pushed for this to be a topic of conversation, because I remember you thinking like agreeing, but then wondering if it was going to have enough legs to sustain an episode,
Right.
Was so like when you read kind of like the the granddaddy of fantasy, which is J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. It's lots of kingdoms, right? So you have the kingdom of Rohan, and you have the kingdom of Gondor, and you have the kingdom of Arnor, and like the elves have their like lords and ladies, and Sauron is like the Dark Lord sitting upon his dark throne and things like that. And like
lots of kind of oh god, what's the word for it? Like feudalism.
Yeah, it's feudalism, it's monarchy. It's very Middle Ages sword and sorcery kind of thing, right? Feels like it could very easily just like be placed within an Arthurian legend and not feel super duper out of place.
Right.
And that's all well and good, but it's also just kind of boring, because it's boring to go from kingdom to kingdom to kingdom.
Yeah, there should definitely be a variety of structures. It keeps things interesting and keeps the players on their toes when they decide to walk into a new place. Like, what are the rules? How are things going to go here?
Exactly. So like, if you're used to living in a civilization that is fairly democratic, and you go into a monarchy for the first time and you're not giving that monarch its due respect, hey, that could be imprisonment or even death, which is incredibly
really
foreign to you as a person.
Yep.
But the other thing was, and we were along the same lines on this, is thinking about how these government systems come to be. So I'm not giving anyone by any stretch of the imagination homework, because this is a podcast and this is for fun. But there is a really interesting work of political philosophy by a guy named Machiavelli, who is infamous for writing a book called The Prince, Have you ever heard of the Prince, Cody?
I have not, I don't think.
Okay. He was like an early political theorist, and The Prince has become the book that's more popular, which is basically like a book about how to take over new areas and force them to follow your rule of law.
Oh, wow.
But earlier in his career, he wrote this book called The Discourses. Now, I should say he is writing during... he's writing in Italy during the De Medici period, Florence specifically.
Okay.
But in it, he has this really interesting thing where he talks about the cycle of government. So if I could just go through that real quick.
Sure.
So, in his estimation, the world starts off in chaos. And then out of the chaos, there is one person who kind of rises above everyone else and proves themselves to be a good leader. And everyone goes, okay, cool. That is a good person. That is a good leader. They will be our leader. And that is a monarchy. And then everyone just kind of assumes that the son is going to, or the child is going to be as good as the leader. But within a couple of generations, there is going to be a bad child who is not very good at leadership. And in order to hold on to the power, they're going to do more and more unpopular things, which is tyranny. So then people rise up and they take it out and they go, okay, so one person in charge isn't going to work. Maybe we should give it to 5 or 6 high, class people. And that is an aristocracy, which is good. And then same thing happens over time. Blah, 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 blah. Eventually it falls to lesser people. He always refers to them as lesser men in the book. And that becomes an oligarchy, which is an aristocracy, but bad, where they're like taking things and they're not listening to the people. Then everyone decides, well, we should all lead. That is democracy, but democracy quickly falls into anarchy, and then in that anarchy rises up a leader. So he kind of viewed government as following a cycle.
Okay.
And so I'm not suggesting that he is right or anything like that, but I think it's just an interesting thing that think about where your country might be in maybe a long-term cycle like this. Perhaps something came in to stop that cycle. For instance, as Cody said, perhaps a group of mages came in and imposed their will using magic, and now that cycle might just be forever broken.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely worth noting that in your world, if you want it to feel big and vast, having kingdoms go and pass or change government styles is a great way to as soon as the players find out, oh, this is just a current thing and they've gone through a lot of changes, there is a gap of time that immediately shows in your world, which feels real.
Yeah. Or sometimes as a DM, throw something crazy and destabilizing your player's way. Like perhaps there's a region that has decided to break off and is trying their own way. And how does the government respond to that? And then how do you as players respond to that as well?
It's also worth noting that for certain campaigns, depending on what direction you want to go, the government is also a good quest giver. You could also use them at your players could be government officials.
That is true.
Trying to, make sure that the way the government works now continues to work as is.
Yeah. And I will also end with one other quick thought, and then maybe we can have a little bit of a dialogue if we feel spirit moves us or whatever.
Sure.
So also maybe try to consider how a radically different government system might impact the region around it as well. So I think a really good example of that, at least in terms of our own world history, is the French Revolution.
Okay.
So the American Revolution happens, right? We establish a republic, and we're across the ocean, so it's not really going to become a crazy destabilizing factor for Europe because, hey, those guys are just far away across the ocean. But France has a big populist uprising. They write the Declaration Rights of Man, but they are surrounded by lots of kingdoms. lots of kingdoms who are scared that the peasants have rose up and have developed their own system of government. So one of the things is France is, for a while, France has to constantly be defending itself because everyone wants to just kind of squash that and reinstate the monarchy to make themselves safer.
Okay.
So think about that. So like, let's say that there's a big uprising, like a big popular uprising. Are neighboring kingdoms going to be afraid of this? Are you so small and insignificant that it's not going to matter? Are you well protected and that's going to keep you safe? These are all important things to consider because there's a ripple effect for sure.
Yes.
That's why it's important to have good notes as a DM. So
also very accurate.
So any closing thoughts?
No, I have a little bit of kind of a government system for my area.
Okay.
It's very loose, and because I talked about it before with the Kingdom of Lungar and Kreisuvik. I already scattered that in there.
Sure.
But I'd like to, because we are building together.
Yeah.
I figured I'd give my two, what I had created. So in the scattered cities that lay in basically the fall of the Lindarian Empire, all of these cities and like these cities, villages, and towns, anything that survived are run as a theocracy.
Okay.
Because demigods kind of control territories within this kind of broken up, ancient Lundarian territory. And each of these cities have self-appointed servants that oversee the day-to-day in these areas. Right. For the protection of the demigods, because these creatures or these people, creatures, whatever you want to call them, they are so powerful that they tend to try to keep the places they have under control protected, and in return, they ask for things such as servitude, sacrifice, offerings, those kinds of things. And it's different from place to place. So not every theocracy is going to have the same rules, and you might go from one town to another and a totally different ballgame.
Okay. So
that's I called it the Scattered Cities of Lundar.
Nice.
So yeah, that's my my dark, and I figured that it'll make more sense when we talk about like religion and gods in our later episode. Sure. Why that kind of is grimdark, but the idea that there are demigods that are very real and live in these areas, and they are the ones who control the cities of the people.
Okay. So my main kingdom that I have developed, which I don't have the name in front of me, so my apologies. The little cities have elected city councils, and then they will vote on a sort of duly appointed representative to go to the capital. So it's like a republic.
Okay.
And then there is no like kind of national election for governor, but there is an election amongst the representatives, so it's I guess kind of like a parliamentarian system.
Okay, cool.
And then I did have to the southwest an area that I have not yet 100% named, but I was just kind of obsessed with developing a confederacy government, a confederacy style government. Okay. Because confederacies are kind of hilarious to me.
So, you're gonna have to refresh my memory on what a confederacy is. Yeah, sure.
So a confederacy is a government system that has it has like a central power, but it's kind of a weak central power, and then each individual section has a lot of power of its own. So historically, why confederacies don't tend to do as well, America was a confederacy initially, and then during the Civil War, the southern states were a confederacy. Basically, so in the Articles of Confederacy period, there was a revolution that was happening in Massachusetts, and basically because there was not a national army, the Articles of the Congress basically had to ask each individual state if they were willing to supply troops to go help squash the rebellion that was happening in Massachusetts, and in almost all the cases, most other colonies said no, which was perfectly within their legal rights, by the way.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you have the idea of a confederacy in your southern area.
I mean, it was more so that it was a series of islands to the southwest.
Right, and they all have their own kind of the individual is technically stronger than the collective.
Yes.
Is what I'm gathering.
So
Cool.
the one that I built, it was just something for funsies, which was it was a each it's a series of smaller islands or archipelagos,
Okay.
and each one is led by an individual gnome. And
Okay. Yeah.
it turns out that all the gnomes are like related to one another. They all just kind of hate
Okay.
each
So a
other.
family of gnomes.
But if you attempt to steal one of the gnomes like technology or blueprints or information or things like that, they're very protective of that. So if you're caught doing that, or like someone's mounting an army against them, they will all band together and fight back. So I was trying to think of how to build a quote unquote successful confederacy.
Sure.
And so their squabbling isn't necessarily the same as it was in like the American context, because they're all pretty ready to throw down and collaborate with one another to defend like what is important to them, which is their like technology, history, legacy, things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
So are signing off?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fandom Roulette. As always,
Yeah,
it was
thanks.
a joy and pleasure to record it to you. This one was
Yeah.
This one was fun. Yeah.
I'm really digging this new structure. Like it's really
I am too.
with the world building and having a strict schedule on like doing stuff. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. It makes prepping for it a lot more fun too.
Yeah.
It allows us to. It allows me at least to, and you as well. It allows us to think thematically,
Right.
which makes
right.
everything kind of flow really nice. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to yet another episode of Phantom Roulette. Go back to the mail section to see all of our social media stuff. But the most important one is, of course, to like, rate, review, and subscribe, and tell a friend.
Yeah.
That helps us out a lot, because this is kind of a side passion project. We're just kind of having fun, but we wanted to get the word out there, and who knows? Let's see what happens. But
Yeah.
signing off, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, please be staying nerdy.
Stay indubitably nerdy.